So your brain's been hacked and it's kind of ruined your day. What's a guy in a future cyberpunk dystopia to do, huh? Why, kill their way to some answers, of course. We're taking a quick peek at Ruiner. Ruiner is somewhat of a twin-stick RPG shooter combat brawler thing. It's got elements of all of those genres while not completely fitting into any of them in particular. It's quick, hyper-stylized, brutal, and really, really difficult. That's not all that surprising since the game is published by Devolver Digital, a publisher who's made a name for themselves with violent and stylized games that have high levels of difficulty. From the one-hit kills of Hotline Miami to the over-the-top Mother Russia Bleeds and Strafe's 90s-inspired Gibbs, these guys love their violence and just about anything that looks like it's from the 80s. Ruiner itself isn't 80s-inspired gameplay-wise, but instead visually. Members of Riken Games have previously worked on titles such as CD Projekt Red's The Witcher series, as well as the 2013 reboot of Shadow Warrior and the depressing This War of Mine. Many of those games were heavy on the set dressing when it comes to giving them a specific style, and the devs didn't leave that behind in their previous work. Ruiner may be the first game from this particular company, but that didn't stop them from diving deep into the Blade Runner pool when putting together this game's art design. Everything has a grim, dark atmosphere lit up by bright, illuminating colors for that futuristic Tokyo look, and it pulls it off rather well. The world of Ruiner is a twisted and brutal one, not just with all the blood and gore as players slice their way through each level, but with how it's set up in the first place. Everyone seems to be at least a small bit of a cyborg with some kind of robotic implant, and the streets are full of gangs and oddly religious nightclubs. There's some weird stuff going on in the future. This focus on body modification with cybernetics has a bit of a catch to it, however, as it leaves people vulnerable to hackers. The main character of the game, whose real name is unknown, finds himself in a peculiar situation. He can't speak nor communicate well, his face is covered by a mask he can't remove, his brother's been kidnapped, and his brain has been hacked by some small-time black hat forcing him to break into a high-security company called Heaven and kill the boss. Thankfully, some random girl who goes by the useful name of Her is able to unhack our unlikely hero, but not before he does quite a number on Heaven's security. For some unknown reason, Her is rather interested with the faceless man, who she affectionately calls Puppy, and is rather insistent on helping him figure out who hacked his brain, why they did so, and what they did with his brother. The developer stated in one of Devolver's Behind the Schemes videos that their main idea for Ruiner gameplay-wise was a cyberpunk version of Hotline Miami. They wanted to keep the pace and lethality of Denaton's Russian mob-killing simulator while adding in some of their own ideas with RPG mechanics plus a leveling system, and I found myself a bit mixed on the outcome. On one hand, Ruiner is probably one of the fastest-paced games I've ever played. Unlike Hotline Miami, a game where everyone dies in one hit, including the player, Ruiner gives players a bit of health to fall back on after taking damage. Don't think that means the game will be any easier though, as enemies can very, very quickly chew through that health bar and leave Puppy as nothing but a stain on the concrete. Enemies hit fast and they hit hard, while also swarming in groups and constantly gaining new tricks throughout the game. Early on, Puppy's cybernetic abilities give him a bit of a leg up on his opponents, but it's not long before he finds himself fighting the same abilities he's using. Through the game's RPG progression system, players can unlock a wide amount of things to keep them alive in combat. The main and most useful one of these is the dash ability. Dashing is a fantastic way to not die in Ruiner. Both Puppy and the guys he's trying to not die to used ranged and melee weapons. Dashing in and out of an enemy's range to hit them without getting hit yourself is just so satisfying. At the start of the game, dashing is limited and can only be done a few times before overheating. Leveling up and putting more skill points into dash within the game's skill tree will let Puppy dash a heck of a lot more, as well as gain access to the multi-dash. Tapping the dash key will cause Puppy to zoom in the direction he's moving, but holding the dash key will slow down time for a short moment, letting you select multiple dash points before time resumes. This can be great for skirting around bullets and enemies while quickly getting behind whatever kind of cover you can find. Dash isn't the only thing within Ruiner's skill tree to unlock, of course, as there is a whole host of things to mess with. You've got 2 kinds of grenades, a few types of shields, the ability to slow down time as well as heal yourself, and upgrades to the Ruiner itself. Abilities are broken up into different groups within the skill tree, and each group is connected to a specific key on your keyboard or mouse in order to use that skill. Everything but the Ruiner, that is. Lost to the ages and breathed only in rumors are tales of a powerful weapon hidden somewhere in heaven. A gun more powerful than most can fathom. This weapon is the Ruiner and has somehow remained missing for an apparently long time, even though it's found just lying in a chest early on in the game. Kinda ruins the impact on finding the thing, don't you think? But not as much as using it does. The game has both melee weapons as well as guns, but it seems the developers wanted their players to favor melee over anything else. Guns overall are just okay when it comes to dealing with enemies. There are quite a few different kinds to come across, anything from giant lasers and flamethrowers to your basic shotguns and SMGs, but for the most part I found them rather unsatisfying. Melee weapons can make quick work of enemies, while guns can have some trouble doing much of anything as the game progresses and foes get tougher. Found guns have a limited amount of ammunition that varies with the one you're using, except for the Ruiner, of course. The Ruiner is the default fallback gun that has infinite ammo. Being the fallback weapon, it is also one of the weakest guns in the game, but it's the only one of them you can upgrade. Putting more skill points into the Ruiner will turn it from a puny pistol into a decent assault rifle, but it's still nothing to write home about. Considering the game is named after this weapon, I would have thought it was something a bit more special than what it is, since actually using the thing kind of ruins the magic. What really doesn't help is just how dang bullet spongy enemies become as the game progresses. Early enemies like guards or the local gang of delinquents called the Creeps are a cakewalk compared to some of the later stuff. It's not long before the forces you're fighting start using the same abilities as you, dashing around all over the place and just being a real honest nuisance. They also get access to shields, filling the game with bullet sponges around halfway through. Bosses are also annoying in this fashion as they hit hard and soak up damage like crazy. Thankfully, Ruiner is one of those games that actually shows health bars for its bosses to give players an indication as to where they are in the fight, which is always nice, especially since fights restart upon death. Ruiner breaks its combat into arena areas, somewhat like how people can fly section off parts of a level in Painkiller. The game saves before entering a combat arena, so if you happen to die, you'll restart right at the beginning, but this is somewhat of a bad thing. There's no real way to know what kind of enemy you'll be coming up against in an arena, nor how many waves you'll have to beat down before the thing is finished. In between combat areas, players can distribute and redistribute their accumulated points throughout the game's progression system, moving them around as they see fit. This is a great way to add variety to the game and means players aren't trapped into making permanent decisions if they happen to get an upgrade they don't like. But there is no way to do this during a combat arena, and there's no way to leave a combat arena once you enter it in the game autosaves. This means you'll be stuck with whatever loadout you've got when you've entered, even if it's unsuitable for the current situation. It really takes away the point of being able to redistribute the progression system. I feel that the game could save before the players enter the arena, not as they enter. That way, if they die and want to try some different abilities and see how things work out, they can, do that. Some of the abilities feel redundant as well. Why would I place an unmovable shield that only covers me while I'm behind it when there's a shield I can take with me? Why would I put points into unlocking slow motion when just holding the right mouse button to use multi-dash not only slows down time but also lets me dash around the room? Why would I pick a grenade that only does limited damage to nearby enemies when I can get a stun grenade instead to stun a group of dudes and beat the living crap out of them? This becomes even more of a problem during boss fights, as some bosses almost require specific abilities to be equipped in order to stand a chance. Ruiner also reuses this Minotaur robot boss quite a few times, even expanding on it into part of the story later on. The Minotaur is a horrible boss to fight due to its high damage output and high health pool, and in one fight this thing gets revived like 3 times before you can finally kill it! I've also come across quite a few bugs and glitches while playing Ruiner, one of the biggest ones being a boss getting stuck running into a wall. It made him an easy target, so I won't complain, but I don't think it's intended. Throughout my playthrough of Ruiner, the game also had a problem of keeping a consistent frames per second, and many areas would start to lag for no apparent reason, while other areas in the same level just wouldn't. I can't really place as to what causes this to happen, and maybe it won't happen on your system, but on mine it did, so it may be something you want to keep in mind if you want to play this game. Working with her to save Puppy's brother isn't the only thing there is to do within the streets of Ruiner's futuristic city that I can never remember the name nor how to pronounce it. There are 3 or 4 different side quests available, but I hesitate to call some of them side quests. One of them is a bounty list to take out specific enemies while going through the game's levels. It tells you where you'll find these enemies, but they're all bosses you have to fight in order to progress in the game anyway, so it seems kind of pointless to have as a side quest. Another one just rewards players for dying a specific amount of times within a level. It's rather easy to get, both purposefully and not, and also just feels kind of pointless. The other 2 are much more like real side quests, with one wanting you to find 3 coins hidden within each level, and another asking you to find cats that are being used for surveillance around the city. No, I'm not kidding. Someone is using cats to keep tabs on the populace, although I'm not sure if they're robot cats or just cybernetic implants in the cats. Overall, Ruiner has a great theme and some decent design that's let down by bullet sponge enemies and a reuse of content. I don't know if the devs found themselves low on funds and that's why they reused the Minotaur boss fight so many times, or if they just really enjoyed that particular fight, but it really gets old to fight the same annoying boss so many times. I liked Ruiner in its early game, but it just seemed to drag on as I progressed further, which is a shame since there aren't that many areas in total. Ruiner is also one of those games that has limited voice acting. Most dialogue is delivered via text box, but sometimes a voice will chime in for a specific line. Most of these come from her before and after combat encounters, but I find it odd that the developers went to the effort to hire some voice actors for this game, only to rarely use them. Ruiner is available on both GOG and Steam for $19.99 US, with a soundtrack full of 80s-inspired synth for $6.99. If you happen to enjoy Devolver's other action-oriented published titles, then you'll probably get some enjoyment out of the fast and frantic fights in Ruiner, but for me, the game kind of overstayed its welcome. Ruiner is a good, not great game that is best played in short bursts in my opinion. Trying to long-haul this thing can easily lead to annoyance and frustration, as well as sore hands from constantly smashing the mouse buttons. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game or this video in the comments section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more quick peeks? Click on the video on the left for Get Even, a narratively driven first-person shooter, or click on the video on the right for Black Mirror, a dark adventure game full of mystery and the occult.